Then let's go on to your next interview. You interviewed Mr. Deion Sanders, who is a defendant in this case. Is that right?
Yes.
Do you remember Mr. Ham interviewing you?
Not really.
Okay. But you do remember it took place?
Yes.
When you're interviewing Mr. Deion Sanders, this is your second interview of him in all, is that correct?
Yes.
Because you had to interview him relating to when he was accused of physically abusing young Shiloh, right?
Yes.
You interviewed Mr. Deion Sanders on September 29, 2015, is that right?
Yes.
And it says September 29, 2015, 11:30 a.m., face-to-face, Mr. Deion Sanders' father. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. And it says, I, Jordan Ham, conducted an interview with the father, Mr. Deion Sanders, in a private conference room at Focus Learning Academy, 2524 West Ledbetter Drive, Dallas, Texas, 75233. Mr. Sanders was accompanied by his attorney, Mr. Rick Robertson. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And is that all accurate?
When was this interview conducted?
9/29/2015.
With Jordan Ham and Rick?
And Rick, your lawyer.
Okay.
And Rick's here today, isn't he?
Yes.
He's seated to your right. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And when you interviewed Mr. Deion Sanders, you were talking to him about the altercation that occurred between Shiloh Sanders and Mr. John Darjean.
Yes.
Now, I want to talk to you about what Mr. Sanders told you. Was anybody present with Mr. Sanders when you interviewed him?
Yes.
Who?
Mr. Rick Robertson is his legal counsel.
Okay. All right. So, is the date of the interview accurate?
I don't know.
Is the time of the interview accurate?
I don't recall the time.
Okay. And I want to go through this with you, okay? And you can read along with me. Have you noted in your report on page 11 what Mr. Deion Sanders told you?
Yes.
Okay. If you'll read along, it states, Mr. Sanders reported that on Thursday, September 17, 2015, the security cameras at the Focus Learning Academy observed Shiloh and another student shooting dice on the school premises. Is that one of the things that Deion Sanders told you?
Yes.
With me. Mr. Sanders reported that on Thursday, September 17, 2015, the security cameras at the Focus Learning Academy observed Shiloh and another student shooting dice on the school premises. Did I read that right?
Yes.
And did you tell Jordan Ham that during your interview?
I don't recall.
Okay. But you could have.
I don't recall.
Do you dispute telling him that?
I don't recall.
Okay. So you're not saying you didn't tell him, and you're not saying you didn't tell, that you did tell him. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm saying I don't recall.
And then Mr. Sanders stated that Shiloh was confronted by security personnel, Mr. John Darjean. Did I read that right?
Yes.
And is that what Deion Sanders told you?
Yes.
Then it states Mr. Sanders indicated that Mr. Darjean did find dice in Shiloh's bag. Then it states Mr. Sanders stated that Shiloh was confronted by security personnel, Mr. John Darjean. Mr. Sanders indicated that Mr. Darjean did find dice in Shiloh's bag. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
And is that accurate? Did you tell Mr. Ham that?
I don't recall that.
Are you saying you did not tell him that?
I'm saying I don't recall that,
Okay.
period.
All right. Is that another thing Mr. Sanders told you?
Yes.
Now, when you interviewed Mr. Sanders, Deion Sanders, he had already talked to his son, Shiloh Sanders, about this altercation. Is that your understanding?
That would be my understanding, yes.
Because he's the one that admitted him to the Dallas County Juvenile Detention Center, isn't he?
Yes.
Then it states Mr. Sanders stated that Shiloh was sent to in-school supervision, ISS. Mr. Sanders reported that Shiloh became disruptive while in ISS. He indicated that Shiloh attempted to use his cell phone while in ISS, which is a violation of school policy. Did I read that right?
Yes, you did.
And did you tell Jordan Ham that?
I don't recall this.
Mr. Sanders stated that Shiloh reportedly struck Mr. Darjean in the chest and began resisting away from Mr. Darjean. Did I read that right?
Yes.
And is that another thing Deion Sanders told you in the interview?
Yes.
Mr. Sanders stated that Shiloh reportedly struck Mr. Darjean in the chest and began resisting away from Mr. Darjean. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Did you tell Mr. Ham that?
I don't recall that.
Okay. But by the time that you gave this face-to-face meeting with Jordan Ham, you had already spoken to Shiloh Sanders about the altercation, hadn't you?
I don't recall that.
You don't recall that? Are you saying you had not already talked
No,
to
what
him?
I'm saying, I don't recall if I talked to Shiloh or not.
But if Mr. Ham interviewed you on the 29th and the altercation occurred on the 17th, you would have talked to Mr. Ham almost 2 weeks after the altercation, right?
Right.
Okay. Do you know where you would have gotten the information where you say that Shiloh reportedly struck Mr. Darjean in the chest and began resisting away from Mr. Darjean?
The key word there is reportedly. That someone had to tell that. I believe Mr. Ham was asking to give him a description of what I thought happened and what was said to have happened. And I'm giving him an analysis on what I was told.
Okay, and who told you that?
Someone at the school, I don't recall.
Was
who
it
told me.
Leroy McClure?
Definitely wasn't Leroy.
Was it Coach Shires?
Who?
Is it Coach Shires? Was it Coach Shields?
Coach Shields. Definitely wasn't Shields. Shields ain't really down with the character, so it wasn't Shields. I don't know who it would have been.
What's Coach Shields' first name?
I don't know.
You know he witnessed this event, don't you?
You're right.
Well, did you read Coach Shields' statement?
No, I didn't.
Are you aware that Coach Shields said in his statement, wrote down in his statement on the day this altercation occurred, that Shiloh Sanders elbowed John Darjean in the chest?
Objection, the same facts not in evidence. Overruled.
No.
Not a proper objection at a deposition.
Are you aware of that, sir?
No, I'm not.
Okay. So can you tell me, sir, where you got the information that Shiloh reportedly struck Mr. Darjean in the chest and began resisting away from Mr. Darjean?
I don't know. Someone in the school. I don't know who told
Could
me.
it have come from your son?
I don't know about that.
Okay.
He wouldn't have said that.
And now, is it your understanding that Mr. Sanders, Deion Sanders, was not a witness to this altercation?
Yes.
Okay. So you understood if Mr. Deion Sanders was not a witness to this altercation, he would have had to have gotten this information from somebody who did witness it, correct?
Correct.
And you believe that was from Shiloh Sanders?
I did not state that.
Okay. You don't know where he got the information?
Correct.
Okay. It could have been from Shiloh Sanders.
It could have been.
Okay. Now, I want to go back through that last sentence. Mr. Deion Sanders told you that Shiloh reportedly struck Mr. Darjean in the chest. Did I read that right?
Yes.
Deion Sanders gave you that information, right?
Yes.
Then Deion Sanders told you that Shiloh began resisting away from Mr. Darjean. Is that right?
Yes.
Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
Then Mr. Sanders stated that Mr. Darjean was required to restrain Shiloh. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
And that's something that Deion Sanders told you.
Yes.
And then it states Mr. Sanders stated that Mr. Darjean was required to restrain Shiloh. Did you tell Jordan Ham that?
I don't recall.
You're not saying you didn't, did you?
No,
Are
I'm saying
you?
I don't recall that.
Okay, all right. So Deion Sanders, among other things, told you in his interview that because Shiloh Sanders struck John Darjean and began resisting away from Mr. Darjean, John Darjean was required to restrain Shiloh Sanders.
Objection 4.
Yes.
He brought that home to you in your interview.
Objection 4.
Can you ask that a different way?
He told you that in your interview with Deion Sanders.
Yes.
Okay. Then it states, Mr. Sanders stated that school personnel are all trained on how to perform proper restraints. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
And did Mr. Sanders tell you that?
Yes.
Then it states Mr. Sanders stated that school personnel are all trained on how to perform proper restraints. Do you recall telling Mr. Ham that?
I definitely didn't tell Mr. Ham that school personnel are all trained. I don't talk like that.
Okay, so you know you didn't tell him that.
No, because some ways you speak and some ways you don't. I know I don't speak in that manner.
Do you know why Jordan Ham, an official of the state of Texas, would make that up then?
You gotta ask him that.
Okay, I did, and he
Yeah.
said he didn't make it up.
I don't talk like that.
Okay.
I know my verbiage. I don't talk like that.
All right. Then it states Mr. Sanders stated that he does not suspect any excessive physical force used in restraining Shiloh.
I don't talk like that.
Well, sir, it says you said that. Did you say that to him?
No, sir.
Okay. And this information, Mr. Ham, was important to you because one of the things you were trying to determine is whether or not excessive force was used by John Darjean on Deion Sanders, right?
On Shiloh Sanders.
On
correct.
Shiloh Sanders, right?
Correct.
And one of the things you were also trying to determine is whether or not John Darjean abused Shiloh Sanders, right?
Yes.
And one of the things that Deion Sanders at least told you back on September 29th, 2015 was that Mr. Sanders stated that Shiloh reportedly struck Mr. Darjean in the chest and began resisting away from Mr. Darjean, and also stated that Mr. Darjean was required to restrain Shiloh Sanders. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And of course, Mr. Sanders stated to you that we went through earlier that school personnel are all trained on how to perform proper restraints, right?
Yes.
Did Mr. Deion Sanders in his conversation with you ever tell you that he thought John Darjean used excessive force on Shiloh Sanders?
No, he did not.
Did you give him an opportunity to?
Yes.
Did Mr. Deion Sanders ever tell you in your interview with him that he thought John Darjean physically abused his son, Shiloh Sanders?
No, he did not.
Did you give him an opportunity to do that?
Yes.
I noticed that in your pleadings in this case, you allege that Mr. Darjean did use excessive force. The question I have for you is, why are you alleging that now when Mr. Ham says you told him you did not suspect any excessive physical force that Mr. Darjean did when he was restraining Shiloh?
He did use physical force. I saw it on a video.
So you think the video shows that?
Yes.
Okay. What part of the video do you believe shows that?
The video that I saw, that I have.
Okay. Do you think that's the same one that's been produced to me?
I don't think it's but one.
What does that video show you? What did it show you?
It showed that your client was out of order, out of character as normal, that this is a repetitive feat, and it showed me that also the actions showed me that this is not his first time, this is a multiple time, but this is his first time going to court with it. Because one particular person in this room that he knows is of the African American descent has done pretty good for himself personally.
Okay. Well, I didn't follow the whole thing, but I
Yes,
want
you did.
I want to unpack it. Okay. Are you saying that John Darjean has used excessive force in another incident?
Yes.
And can you give me any details about
No,
that
I
other
can't.
than your conclusory statements?
Well, yeah, right. Whatever that means, yeah.
Okay. Who was the individual that you think?
I don't know the individuals' names.
Okay. Okay. Can you give me any other details about it?
No, I can't.
Can you give me the date that it occurred?
No, I can't.
Can you tell me where it occurred?
No,
Can you
at
tell me-
school,
All right.
at AAA Academy.
Gentlemen.
Thank you, sir.
Let me remind you that you need to slow down and let each other finish your questions and answers.
Yes, Your Honor, that was my fault. I apologize. Do you know what school it took place at?
AAA Focus Academy.
And do you know if that was investigated?
Pretty sure it was.
Do you know anybody that witnessed it?
Yes, I think it was several witnesses.
And do you know their names?
No, I don't.
Do you know if it was before the altercation in question or after the altercation in question?
I think it was before the altercation.
Then it states, Mr. Sanders stated that he does not suspect any excessive physical force used in restraining Shiloh. Did I read that right?
Yes.
And is that what Deion Sanders himself told you?
Yes.
Did Deion Sanders ever tell you he thought his son Shiloh Sanders was in any way mistreated by Mr. John Darjean?
No.
Did you give him an opportunity to tell you?
Yes.
And Deion Sanders, at that very time, when you were interviewing him, he had legal counsel there, didn't he?
Yes.
He had a lawyer there by the name of Rick Robertson the entire time, didn't he?
Yes.
Then it states, Mr. Sanders stated that he feels as if the situation was handled appropriately by Mr. Darjean, right?
Yes.
And Deion Sanders himself told you that.
Yes.
Did Deion Sanders ever tell you anything to the effect that he believed John Darjean did not handle the altercation between Mr. Darjean and Shiloh Sanders wrong or improper?
No, he did not.
Did you give him an opportunity to tell you that?
Yes.
Okay. You also mentioned race.
Yes.
You mentioned African American descent.
Right.
Do you think in any way the altercation between my client and your son was race oriented?
No, you missed it because you're white. You missed it.
You're
I was
saying I
saying-
missed.
Yeah.
You're saying I missed this because I'm white?
Yes, I was saying of African American descent because only two of us in this room are African Americans. That's what I meant by that.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with my son
Okay.
being African American. It has something to do with he and I being African American.
Okay. And what is that?
I was saying it's only two African Americans in here, and one worked his butt off and accumulated a couple dollars.
And who is that?
That
Mr.
would be I.
That would be you.
Yes.
Okay. All right. What does that have to do with this case?
Why do you think we're here?
No, well, you tell me.
We're here because he's broke, don't want to work, and want money because I worked my butt off for it.
Okay. So that's why you think we're here.
No, that's why I know we're here.
Okay.
I don't think that. I'm very accurate on that one.
All right. So you believe my client has made a claim against you because somehow you have accumulated wealth.
Of course, he's made a claim against my son as well as I because this isn't his first instance.
Okay.
And I don't know any of those guys that you're suing.
What do you mean you don't know any of the guys?
I don't know anybody else in that school that he has had an altercation with, and he has. He's been terminated as well several times. I'm sure you know that. But yet and still, we find ourselves here.
So are you saying that Mr. Darjean was terminated from Focus Academies? You'll have to answer out.
Yes, I'm sorry.
And do you know who terminated him?
I don't know the principal's name because there's been several.
Okay. All right. I want to get back to the report. Are you saying, Mr. Sanders, that you did not tell Jordan Ham that you didn't suspect any excessive force used in restraining your son?
No, sir, I did not tell him that.
Then I want to read on, if you want to read with me. Okay. Then it states, Mr. Sanders stated that he feels as if the situation was handled appropriately by Mr. Darjean. Did you tell Mr. Ham that?
I don't believe I did.
Okay. Then it states, Mr. Sanders reported that Shiloh's grandmother, Miss Connie Knight, was contacted and requested to pick Shiloh up from school as Mr. Sanders was out of town. Did I read that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Does that help refresh your recollection that you were out of town on the date of this altercation?
I don't think that's up for debate that I was out of town.
Okay, so you now concede that.
No, I don't know where I was.
Okay.
I don't recall.
Okay, all right. Then it states, you were out of town, you just don't know where you were.
Yes.
Okay. Then it states, Mr. Sanders stated that Shiloh was suspended from attending school the following day as a result of the incident.
I don't recall.
Okay. But did you tell Jordan Ham that Shiloh was suspended from attending school the next day? And did you tell him that on the date of this interview?
The date of this interview was when, the 29th?
Yes, sir.
I'm sure after everything was garnished, we understood then, after someone raised sand about Shiloh being at school. Shiloh never told me he was suspended. The school officials had never told me Shiloh was suspended. So the assumption would be that Shiloh's not suspended.
But you don't dispute telling Mr. Ham that?
I don't know what I told Mr. Ham at that point.
Okay. Do you know if this conversation was recorded?
I don't know.
Okay. Then it states, Mr. Sanders stated that despite Shiloh's suspension, Shiloh still proceeded to attend school the following morning with the intentions of fighting the student who told on him for playing dice. Did you tell Mr. Ham that?
I don't recall.
How would you have gotten that information? Would you have gotten it from Shiloh?
I don't really know where I got the information from, sir.
Okay. Then it states Mr. Sanders reported that Shiloh did engage in a physical altercation with the student and was again sent back to his residence. Did you tell Mr. Ham that?
I don't recall, sir.
Then it states Mr. Sanders stated that he proceeded to transport Shiloh, and part of it's redacted, and I'll pick up where it's not, and admitted Shiloh into the crisis intervention program where Shiloh is currently enrolled. Did I read that right?
Yes, sir.
And that's true, isn't it?
Yes, sir, somewhat.
Okay. Then it states Mr. Sanders stated that Shiloh is just being a 15-year-old defiant teenager who is acting out. Mr. Sanders reported that he feels it is in Shiloh's best interest to remain at the Latote Center at this time. Did I read that right?
Yes, sir.
Did you tell Mr. Ham that?
I don't recall, sir.
Why did you admit Shiloh into the Dallas County Juvenile Detention Center?
After speaking to my pastor and a couple others, I felt like it was in the best interest of Shiloh because he had, excuse me?
I'm sorry.
Okay. Because he had run away.
So he ran away from home?
Yes.
Okay. When did he run away from home?
During that process.
Were you gone out of town when he ran away from home?
No, I wasn't. I was home.
Did he run away from home after the altercation?
I don't recall, sir.
Was one of the reasons you admitted him to the Dallas County Juvenile Detention Center because of the altercation he engaged in with Mr. Darjean?
No.
How about the assault that he perpetrated on Devontae Brookman?
No, I don't think that was an assault. I don't think you could call it what you want. There was not an assault. It was because of he running away.
Okay. Then it states, he stated that Shiloh's progress will determine how long Shiloh remains at the facility. Mr. Sanders stated that Shiloh needs time to sit down and think about the path he is currently heading down. Did you tell Mr.
I don't recall, sir.
Okay. You then state Mr. Sanders stated that Shiloh may end up in prison at his current rate, and that Mr. Sanders reported that he does attend weekly meetings with Shiloh's therapist and caseworker and does obtain updates in regards to Shiloh's progress. Did you tell Mr.
I
Campbell?
don't recall, sir.
The therapist that you would go to with Shiloh, was that the therapist at the Dallas County Juvenile Detention Center?
Litot.
Litot?
Yes.
Okay. So was that therapist?
Yes.
I noticed that when I took Mr. Ham's deposition, Mr. Ham also advised me that Shiloh had complained to Child Protective Services that you had physically abused him and mentally abused him before the altercation in question on several occasions. Are you aware of that?
No, sir. I'm aware of him complaining. I don't know about your several occasions, but I'm aware of him calling Mr. Ham.
And
Yes, sir.
complaining about you?
Yes, sir.
Alleging that you had physically and both mentally and emotionally abused him?
Yes.
And that was on several occasions?
Yes, sir.
That was before this altercation, is that right?
I don't recall, sir.
Okay. But each of those, is it your understanding that each of those allegations lodged by your son against you were found unfounded?
I don't know what unfounded means.
Well, they were found invalid. They did not
Just say
find
false.
cause to believe.
Just say false.
Okay, were they false?
They were found false? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So Shiloh falsely accused you of that?
Yes.
Then it states, Mr. Sanders reported that Shiloh's grandmother, Miss Connie Knight, was contacted and requested to pick Shiloh up from the school as Mr. Sanders was out of town. Deion Sanders told you that too, right?
Yes.
Then it states, Mr. Sanders stated that Shiloh was suspended from attending school the following day as a result of the incident, right?
Yes.
And that was the incident relating to Mr. Darjean and Mr. Sanders, right? Shiloh Sanders, right?
That or the dice game involvement.
Okay, one or the other, right?
Yes.
But Deion Sanders told you Shiloh Sanders was suspended, told not to come back to school.
Yes.
Then it states, in the next paragraph, Mr. Sanders stated that despite Shiloh's suspension, Shiloh still proceeded to attend school the following morning with the intention of fighting the student who told on him for playing dice. Is that what Deion Sanders told you?
Yes.
Mr. Sanders reported that Shiloh did engage in a physical altercation with the student and was again sent back to his residence. Did Deion Sanders tell you that?
Yes.
So it was your understanding that despite Shiloh being suspended on September 17, 2015, he came back to school on the 18th to get in a fight with the young boy that had told on him for shooting dice?
Yes.
Then it states, Mr. Sanders stated that he proceeded to transport Shiloh, and it's redacted out, but it says to the Latote Center at the Dallas County Juvenile Detention Center and admitted Shiloh into the Crisis Intervention Program where Shiloh is currently enrolled. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that's what Deion Sanders told you.
Yes.
So at the time you interviewed Deion Sanders, Shiloh was at the Latote Center.
Yes.
Last paragraph. It then states, Mr. Sanders stated that Shiloh is just being a 15-year-old defiant teenager who is acting out. Did I read that right?
Yes.
And did Deion Sanders tell you that?
Yes.
Then it states Mr. Sanders reported that he feels it is in Shiloh's best interest to remain at the Latote Center at this time. He stated that Shiloh's progress will determine how long Shiloh remains at the facility. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
And did Mr. Sanders tell you that?
Yes.
Then it states Mr. Sanders stated that Shiloh needs time to sit down and think about the path he is currently heading down. Mr. Sanders stated that Shiloh may end up in prison at his current rate. Mr. Sanders reported that he does attend weekly meetings with Shiloh's therapist and caseworker and does obtain updates in Shiloh's progress. Did Deion Sanders tell you all that?
Yes.
I want to go back. When you interviewed Shiloh Sanders for the prior incident, the incident that was reported on August 30th, 2015, where it was alleged that Deion had abused Shiloh. Did Shiloh Sanders tell you he believed his dad physically abused him?
Yes.
And you gave him an opportunity to tell you how he believed Deion Sanders physically abused him.
Yes.
But you didn't believe him, did you?
I did not state that.
Well, you found your ultimate finding in that case was that Deion Sanders did not physically abuse Shiloh Sanders, right?
Correct.
So you did not find there was evidence of what Shiloh Sanders was telling you, right?
Correct.
Okay.